Jonas was on his way home when he saw her, curled up beneath a bridge, soaked to the bone, shivering. The rain was pounding the pavement, but she didn't seem to feel it. Her eyes were glassy, as if trapped somewhere between the present and a trauma she couldn't escape. She wore a shirt far too thin for the cold of that night. In her arms, she clutched a wet, torn blanket like it was a shield. He stopped. His heart tightened. Something about that scene felt personal, familiar. On instinct, Jonas took off his own jacket and approached slowly, as if she were a wounded bird that might fly away at any moment. "Hey, are you okay? Are you hungry?" She looked at him with fear, but said nothing. She just nodded. It wasn't the first time Jonas had reached out to a stranger, but there was something different about her, something he couldn't explain. Earlier that same day, Jonas had been fired from the only job that kept his home afloat. 10 years working as a forklift operator. 10 seconds to be let go with a cold handshake. Budget cuts, they said. A widower since the age of 32, he raised his 8-year-old daughter Lily on his own. A sweet girl with a vivid imagination who wrote little notes to her mom and placed them inside a blue shoebox, as if somehow, somewhere in the sky, her mother might read them. Jonas did the impossible to keep a roof over his daughter's head, and that night, even broken, he still found the strength to help someone else. He brought the girl home. She looked about 17, said her name was Sophie, and that she just needed a place for one night. One night. Jonas had no idea that this simple request would change the course of his life forever. The next morning, Sophie woke up startled by the smell coming from the kitchen. For a moment, she thought she was still dreaming. The aroma was warm, comforting. The scent of sizzling bacon, pancakes with maple syrup, fresh brewed coffee, and something she hadn't felt in a long time, safety. Jonas was there, wearing an apron, stirring a skillet while softly humming an old song from the radio. Lily, still in her unicorn print pajamas, was sitting at the table coloring with crayons, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. And in a way, it was. "Good morning," Jonas said, noticing Sophie standing in the doorway. She hesitated. I thought you were going to ask me to leave this morning." Jonas smiled with tired eyes. "I promised you one night. Didn't say it couldn't turn into 2. Sophie smiled for the first time since she'd stepped into that house, and that smile moved Jonas more than he cared to admit. It was like watching a wilted plant begin to rise again. During breakfast, Sophie sat quietly, but Lily didn't let the silence last long. "Do you want to draw with me later? I have a whole sketchbook of strong girls. You look like one." Sophie swallowed hard. She wanted to say she wasn't strong at all, but she nodded, and for the first time in a long time, she felt like she belonged somewhere. In the days that followed, Jonas looked for odd jobs around the neighborhood, but what he found was a harsh reality. No one wanted to hire someone without a college degree who had a little girl to care for. Money got tight. The fridge grew emptier, and then he had an idea. Cooking. It was what he did best, not by profession, but by heart. He had learned as a boy from his grandmother how to make chicken and rice, spiced chili, and buttery cookies that melted in your mouth. And when he lost his wife, it was in the kitchen that he found refuge. He took his last savings and bought simple ingredients: chicken, potatoes, flour, spices. He set up a folding stall on the front lawn with a handmade sign and began selling homemade meals cooked with love. On the first day, he sold 8. On the second, 12. By the end of the week, he was already receiving orders. Sophie offered to help. "I can help with packaging, organizing, that kind of stuff, if you want." "Sure," Jonas replied, surprised but grateful. Lily wanted to join in too. She'd spend weekends wearing an apron too big for her, writing down orders on colorful pieces of paper. They were a makeshift team, but a team nonetheless. And, most importantly, a family. Little by little, Sophie started to open up. She didn't say much about her past, but it was clear how much she carried. Some nights, she would cry softly, not knowing Jonas could hear from the hallway. One night, he found her in the kitchen at 3 a.m., drinking water, her eyes red. "Bad dreams?" he asked. She nodded. "Wanna talk about it?" "Not right now." And Jonas didn't push. He knew some pain needed time before it could become words. That same week, Sophie was caught off guard when she saw that Jonas had fixed up a corner of the bedroom just for her. A simple mattress, but with a floral blanket and a little bookshelf with books. A handwritten note rested on the pillow. "While you're here, you're home." She held the note like it was a contract for a new life. Months passed. Jonas's food became a hit in the neighborhood. He got compliments, smiles, even invitations to local fairs. Lily laughed more. So did Sophie. And for a while, the outside world seemed far away. Until one day, everything changed. It was a Saturday morning. Jonas was making chicken empanadas in the kitchen when he heard the TV in the living room. Breaking news! Billionaire Edgar Beaumont offers $10 million to anyone with information about his missing daughter, Sophie Beaumont, age 17. Jonas froze. The sound of oil sizzling in the pan faded into a distant hum. He ran to the living room. A photo of Sophie, younger, smiling in a formal portrait, filled the screen. The teen went missing over a month ago. Edgar, visibly shaken, says he will do anything to get her back safe. Lily, curious, commented, "She kind of looks like our Sophie, huh?" But Jonas didn't respond. His heart was pounding so hard it hurt. It was her. No doubt about it. He ran to the bedroom, where Sophie was folding clothes with her headphones on. She looked up and understood everything before he even said a word. "It's you," Jonas whispered. Sophie went pale. "I can explain." She took a deep breath, her eyes welling up with tears. "You don't understand. If he finds me, I'm dead." Breathing heavily, Sophie finally let out the truth that would change everything. "Jonas, my father doesn't love me. He wants to kill me." Jonas stood in silence. For a second, he thought he'd misheard, but the look in Sophie's eyes left no room for doubt. It was pure fear, raw truth. "What?" he murmured, confused, barely able to speak. Sophie lowered her gaze and began explaining, her voice trembling. "A few months ago, my grandmother, his mother, got really sick. She's 90, can barely get out of bed. But her mind is still sharp. And before her health got worse, she made a will. I was there. She said she wanted everything she had. And it's a lot, Jonas. A lot. To go to me when I turned 18. She said my father was cruel, that she could never forgive him for what he did to my mother." Jonas listened, more and more shocked. "My dad lost it. He argued with her, said she was crazy, that it wasn't fair. But she didn't change her mind. And after that, he started acting differently. He followed me, controlled what I ate, where I went. And one night, I heard him talking to one of the security guards. He said, 'I can't let that fortune slip away to a spoiled little girl. That if something happened before she turned 18, everything would revert back to me through direct inheritance.'" She paused, swallowing hard. "That's why I ran. I knew that if I stayed, he'd find a way to make me disappear, and no one would ever know." Jonas felt the ground collapse beneath him. The girl he had sworn to protect was the heir to a billionaire empire. And now, Her life was in danger. But in that moment of pure terror, Jonas already knew. He wasn't going to leave her alone. Not for a single second. Jonas couldn't sleep. While Lily slept soundly in the room next door, he stared at the ceiling, listening to every gust of wind rattling the windows. Sophie's words echoed like thunder in his mind. My father is going to try to kill me before I turn 18. It wasn't just shocking, it was too outrageous to be a lie. The look in her eyes, the tremble in her hands, the genuine fear in her voice, everything confirmed it. Sophie was telling the truth. The next morning, Jonas made waffles and bacon with eggs for Sophie and Lily. He set the kettle on the stove to boil water and brewed a strong pot of coffee, just like he did every morning. Sophie tried to smile, but her eyes were distant, and Lily noticed. Jonas picked up on the mood and tried to ease the tension. "Hey, it's Saturday. Gourmet root day," he said, trying to cheer the girls up. Sophie forced a smile and got up to help pack the sandwiches, burritos, and handmade donuts Jonas prepared in the kitchen. He had rented a small food trailer and parked it in front of the community park. That's where he sold to the neighborhood every weekend. Local residents, immigrant families, neighborhood workers, and even a few tourists drawn in by the irresistible smell. But that morning, while serving customers, Jonas noticed a black car parked across the street. Tinted windows, engine running, and it didn't move for hours. When they got home, the same car was parked just a few meters away. That night, while Lily slept and Sophie watched an old movie on the small TV in the living room, Jonas went onto an anonymous legal form and asked a simple question. If a minor fears for her life because of a parent, and that parent is extremely wealthy and influential, what legal options does she have to protect herself? The replies ranged from special shelters to witness protection programs, but time was against them. Sophie would turn 18 in just a few weeks, and according to her, that was the deadline. Jonas knew he had to act. The next day, while Sophie and Lily were busy designing a new menu for the upcoming Saturday, he went to the local police station. He spoke to the officer on duty, but as soon as he mentioned Edgar Beaumont, the man backed off. "Edgar Beaumont, the billionaire? I'm sorry, sir. A claim like that requires hard evidence. We can't act on suspicions alone," the officer said, visibly uncomfortable. Jonas left with a heavy heart. He knew he couldn't just sit back, so he had an idea. On Monday, he borrowed a tiny microphone from a friend at the park, a young aspiring filmmaker, and hid the recorder inside his coat. He searched online for Edgar's address. It wasn't hard to find. The mogul owned a luxury mansion in Connecticut's upscale suburbs, surrounded by rolling green hills and armed security guards. He put on his best coat, the brown one he wore to job interviews, and drove out there. At the mansion, he was stopped by 2 security guards, but insisted, "Tell Mr. Beaumont, I have information about Sophie." The tension was thick. Within minutes, he was escorted into a large room made of marble and glass. Edgar entered, tall, gray-haired, dressed in an Italian linen suit with a cold expression. His eyes sparkled with fake emotion at the mention of his daughter. "So, you've seen her. Is she all right? Where is she?" Jonas took a deep breath. "She's safe. But I just wanted to understand, what made her run away from home, run away from her own father?" Edgar smiled, but it was a smile that never reached his eyes. "Let's stop pretending, Jonas. I know you're with her, and I know you want the reward, so quit playing the hero. Tell me where she is, or maybe you'll end up regretting it." "She said you want to kill her." Edgar leaned in, his voice icy. "That girl is a mistake. Her mother, too weak. And my own mother, who's barely conscious anymore, decided to leave everything to that little brat? I built this empire. I keep this family afloat. She's not taking it from me, and neither are you." Jonas could barely contain his shock. He kept his gaze steady, told Edgar he would return soon with Sophie, and left the mansion with his heart pounding. When he got home, he heard screaming. "Daddy!" Lily cried, eyes wide, clutching a pillow in the corner of the bedroom. Men dressed in black had broken into the house just minutes earlier and taken Sophie. Lily had hidden in the closet and escaped unharmed. Jonas collapsed to his knees, but this wasn't the end. It was time to act. He drove straight to the police station, the audio files saved on a flash drive. He handed it over to a detective named Ramirez, who listened in silence. When the recording ended, the detective simply said, "Get ready. This is going to explode." The next morning, the local news aired an exclusive report. Breaking! Billionaire under investigation for alleged murder plot against own daughter. The recording had been leaked. The audio was clear, brutal, undeniable. Edgar Beaumont was arrested that same afternoon, charged with attempted murder, kidnapping, and abuse of power. Sophie was rescued by a federal agent and taken to a secure shelter. When Jonas and Lily were reunited with her, the emotion was overwhelming. Lily ran and hugged Sophie so tightly it brought everyone to tears. Days later, Sophie's grandmother passed away, but not before seeing her granddaughter one last time, in a brief moment of lucidity. Sophie held her hand and whispered, "I promise to honor everything you built." When she turned 18, Sophie officially inherited her grandmother's estate. The fortune was transferred to her name, but she did something unexpected. She invited Jonas and Lily to live with her in the mansion, now renovated to feel like a home, not a gilded prison. Sophie also had an idea: to transform part of the property into a community support center. With Jonas's help, she opened a culinary school for at-risk youth, teaching not just recipes, but also dignity and self-worth. Jonas, wearing an apron embroidered with "Chef at Heart," taught how to make the best chili, the juiciest handcrafted burgers, and the perfect pancakes with maple syrup. Lily ran among the students, now with a smile on her face and a future glowing in her eyes. Sophie had finally found a home. Not because of the mansion, but because she had two people beside her who showed her what true love was, even without blood ties. Jonas didn't win the $10 million reward. He gained something far more precious: a new family, a purpose, and the proof that even the coldest, rainiest nights can hide miracles. And now, if this story touched your heart, we invite you to follow our channel. Here you'll find more stories like this, of resilience, love, twists, and hope. Because sometimes, all it takes is one unexpected gesture to change an entire life.